What we do is find out the truth. It's neutral. We have no control over what the truth is going to be. Our job as private investigators is to find out the truth. Hi, this is Larry K. with ShadowAnyone.com and the creator of the Investigator's Ultimate Guide series, which is premium private investigator training from someone who's been there and done that. Today is for big boys and big girls. If you are going to be easily offended, or you're looking for me to take a side, or trying to read between the lines of what is Larry really saying here, click away, because this is neutral. It's the same thing private investigators have done for 100 years. I'm just going to talk about the summer of 2020 and why we're more interested when we do background checks now in traffic offenses than we have been in the past, because they mean something different now. Of course, if you're doing pre-employment screening and the employer wants to know about traffic or that, you simply go to the Bureau of Motor Vehicles or the Department of Motor Vehicles, depending on where you are. You don't have to go there, but run an abstract, a driving record, and the last 36 months is going to come up with the speeding tickets or failure to control or whatever it might be. That's when employers are interested about driving history, how we look for driving history. Criminal history is handled a little bit differently. You've got to go, you just can't go to like necessarily one source like that. So what you normally do is you go to the clerk of court's office, either virtually or in person, usually virtually anymore, and you run the person through the index for the criminal index on the municipal court or lower court, and then on the common pleas or superior court, because those two are divided. Of course, the upper court is going to be felonies and more serious civil matters, these very high-level lawsuits, things like that. The lower court, municipal court, whatever it's called in your area, that's going to be smaller civil things. Usually that's where you're going to have your small claims court. Like there's a dollar cap amount, maybe around $3,000 for lawsuits that are smaller like that. You're going to have like evictions. You're going to have minor misdemeanors and misdemeanors. Misdemeanor generally described as an offense that's going to be punishable by 1 year or less in jail. And your minor misdemeanors, your really super small things that you really only ever get a ticket for. It's not a big deal. Something like jaywalking, for example. Also in that lower court, you're going to find traffic offenses. Now, when you're looking through the index, this is just basically a list of people, and you can search by different criteria. Usually you're going to type in the name for most places, or if you're blessed enough to have a social security number spot in that index for you to search, and you have that because you're doing maybe a criminal background check for a pre-employment screening, you're going to see search by name in the index, and you're going to very quickly see the difference between civil cases and criminal cases and traffic cases, because the case numbers are going to be a giveaway. The case number, which has some kind of, I would say, almost encoded information, but I mean, just look at one. It's the date, usually the year that it happened. And you're going to have a couple of letters to be maybe CR indicating it's criminal, or CV that it's civil, or TD or TRD, something like that to indicate that it's traffic. And when you're looking down through the list, a lot of times we just don't care about that traffic stuff. So we just don't even, it's not even bother to click on it or look at it. Why waste our time? However, now here, especially in the summer of 2020, you need to be aware of what might come up in that traffic that you're not used to finding. This is a good place for me to point out that there is a difference between a protester and a rioter. Protesting is a legal activity protected by the First Amendment United States Constitution. God bless it. Rioting, a criminal act. Totally different. Sometimes hard to tell the difference on paper as to what was really going on. You need to have due diligence when you find someone down knee-deep in the hoopla. Were they participating in a legitimate legal protest, or were they participating in illegal activities? I give you that kind of important reminder and disclaimer because what I'm about to teach you will show you people who were kind of down in the hoopla. So a lot of times, these traffic offenses that you would normally overlook, now there are a lot of tickets and citations being written for pedestrian in the roadway, which is going to come up usually under the traffic section of that municipal court or lower court index. You're also going to have offenses like riding outside of a motor vehicle, which are going to come up under traffic. And so pedestrian in the roadway, this is maybe a little bit different than a jaywalking ticket. You look at your local areas to learn, but people who block the streets intentionally, refusing to let traffic go, refusing to move out of the way when law enforcement legally tells them to, they will sometimes get this quote unquote traffic type offense of pedestrian in the roadway. Also, these rolling roadblocks you see, or people blocking streets with cars. Sometimes a person will get cited, even if they're not the driver, as riding outside the vehicle. So if they're riding on the hood or hanging outside the windows and involved in that way, you might see that kind of offense, riding outside a vehicle. It's important to know this now, because as you proceed from here on to do background checks, you don't necessarily want to just out of hand dismiss traffic offenses. When you look at the index, you'll be able to see what year it happened. If it's in a year that you're concerned about, like this year, 2020, click on it, take a look. You're going to see some things very easily, including the location of the offense. And if you look and say, wow, this was right outside the state house or right outside the health department, then also the date when you look at it. And you can say, this was a date when there was a lot of problems down there. This was a location where there was a lot of problems. And it's, again, your due diligence to have to look further and see, is this someone who was cited while they were doing a legitimate legal protest, or is this someone who was just out of control? Those are two different activities, two very different activities. Wrapping the whole thing up here, one, don't necessarily ignore traffic offenses anymore, especially if you see them falling during a time that you're concerned about this rioting type activity. You shouldn't be concerned about protesting activity. That's legal. The other thing you need to know is do your due diligence. When you see something like this come up, do not lump everybody into the same bucket, because they are not all performing the same activities, and some of them are quite legitimate and legal, and you don't want to be giving a report to a client that skews against somebody who's just exercising their constitutional rights. If you have any questions or comments, throw them down in a comment. I bet we get some on this one. In the meantime, this is Larry K with ShadowAnyone.com. Remember, do the right thing, even if it's the hard thing.